Thank you. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee of Monday, the 29th of June 2020, which is being undertaken virtually in accordance with the recently enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. Before I start the meeting, can I remind all members of the following, please? Please ensure that you mute your microphones when not speaking. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. And please try and avoid repeating any points which have already been made. And please don't interrupt other councillors and respect the position of the chair. At the beginning of each item, I will ask councillors who wish to speak on that item, and I will keep a note, as well as the Democratic Services team. And I will then call councillors in the order in which I have listed them, and the method of voting will be done by a roll call. Members, I will remind you of this when we get later into the meeting. And please remember that this meeting is still being broadcast in the normal way via Facebook Live, and that the public can hear what is being said and decided on, and can see the councillors as well. So please take care to prevent any background distractions. So with these matters in mind, can I call on Mark Devlin to do a roll call of all officers and councillors to ascertain who is in attendance?
Thank you, Chair. Could councillors please state present when I call your name, please? Councillor Lyons.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bialik.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Branston.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fole. You're on mute, Councillor Fole.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gassane.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Sutton.
Present.
Thank you very much. I confirm that's all members in attendance, Chair, and the meeting is quorate. I would just like to do a roll call as well of the officers in attendance. So Director Bindu Arjun.
Present.
Thank you. Assistant Service Lead Planning City Development, Roger Clotworthy.
Present.
Thank you. Principal Project Manager Developments, Matt Diamond.
Present.
Thank you. Principal Project Manager Deborah Crowther.
Present.
Thank you. And we also have myself and my colleague Howard Bassett from Democratic Services in attendance as well. And we are fully quorate to proceed, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. So the first item on the agenda is apologies, and we have none, as obviously been said. The next item of business is the business of the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 1st of June 2020. Are members happy to approve these minutes as a correct record of the proceedings?
Agreed.
Can you do a roll call, please, Mark, for this?
Yes, of course, Chair. Thank you. Can members please state if you're for or against approving of the minutes when I call your name? Councillor Bialik.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Branston.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gassane.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
For.
That's a unanimous vote to approve the minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Obviously, I will sign them if I possibly can. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, declarations of interest. If any members any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda and haven't already included it on the register of interest, can they declare them now? Item 4, the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985 for the exclusion of press and public. We have no part 2 items on the agenda. Item number 5 is the St Thomas Leisure Centre item at Carrick Street. I must advise the committee that this item has been taken off this evening's agenda. The applicant has requested an extension of time in respect of their application. So, Bindu, do you wish to comment on this one, please?
Just very briefly, thank you, Chair. As you said, this item has been removed from this evening's agenda in order to allow the applicant to work with the Council and Historic England on the issues that have been raised by Historic England as part of their response to the consultation. The response from Historic England, if it's not already on the Council's website, will certainly be there by tomorrow morning. And the extension of time, Chair, is for a month, so our expectation is that we'll be bringing this to the next planning committee in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. This brings us on to item 6, which is Alden's Farm East, Chudley Road and Dawlish Road, Exeter. I think Matt Diamond, you're making the presentation on this one, aren't you, Matt?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Would you like to go ahead?
Good evening, members. This is an outline planning application for a residential development for up to 234 dwellings, with all matters reserved except access, with details of access onto Chudley Road and Dawlish Road. The site address is Alden's Farm East, between Chudley Road and Dawlish Road, on the edge of Alphington. The officer's report is on pages 33 to 66 of the agenda pack. Now, this application was actually first submitted in 2015 and came before you back on the 3rd of December 2018, when the site was being promoted by Devon County Council as agent and applicant. At that committee, members deferred the application over a number of concerns, including feeling that there was a lack of information that had been provided to demonstrate that the development could come forward sustainably on the land. Since then, Redrow Homes has submitted information and fresh plans in December 2019 and are now promoting the application. A fresh consultation was carried out earlier this year. I'll just run through the slides. This is the location plan showing the boundary outlined in red. We've got the edge of Alphington to the north, Chudley Road to the west, and Dawlish Road to the east, and the land to the south, which is in Teambridge District Council, does have planning permission for residential development. This is an aerial view of the site. And these are some close-up images of the site taken from the submitted landscape and visual impact appraisal. This top view is showing Chudley Road, and the bottom is showing the site. These views are taken from slightly further away. The bottom view is showing the existing hedgerow along Dawlish Road that's currently forming the boundary. This top view is taken from Ludwell Valley Park, showing the location in the context of the city as a whole. And the bottom view is showing the view from Chudley Road facing towards the south. This top image is taken from Pulpit Walk to the north of the site, and the bottom image is taken from Holden Forest Park. Now, Redrow Homes has submitted some fresh parameters plans for the application, which were missing when the application came before you before. This plan shows the basic urban design principles of an access point from Chudley Road and from Dawlish Road, with a primary vehicular route running between those two access points, with the development arranged either side. Around the boundary to the southeast and the northwest, a strip of landscaping will be retained, and a public open space is proposed in the middle of the site as a focal point. To the south, connections are proposed to the new open space within the development that's been permitted to the south within Teambridge. And now members must remember that this is an illustrative plan, so the actual details will be determined at a later stage through the submission of reserved matters. This is another diagram showing the layout in terms of the main urban parts of the site, indicating some slightly higher density areas with dashed lines, and obviously showing the green edge that will be retained in order to protect the setting of the adjoining developments and also the hedgerows along those boundaries. This diagram is a landscape and green infrastructure principles plan. This shows a little bit more clearly the main public open space in the centre of the development, which is described as a village green, connecting to what's described as a linear park running through the site along the northwest boundary, and green infrastructure connection points to the south and also to the northwest. This is the illustrative master plan demonstrating how the development could come forward, showing the arrangement of dwellings around the roads. See the primary road running through the middle of the site with secondary and tertiary streets either side. And these plans, because this is an outline application where access has been specified in detail, are the technical plans showing how the accesses would work and the necessary visibility displays to ensure that the accesses will be safe. As part of the proposals, a new footway is proposed along the length of the site along Chudley Road. And these plans show the proposed access on Chudley Road to the left and the proposed access to Dawlish Road on the right. And the applicants have also provided some artist impressions of what the scheme could look like. And as you can see, this shows the arrangement of the dwellings either side of the principal route through the site and the green corridor running through the centre and along the northwest boundary. And these are some more detailed artist impressions of certain parts of the site. So this image is showing the gateway as described from Dawlish Road to the north. This is indicating houses fronting onto Dawlish Road, providing a positive frontage. This is indicating the primary street through the centre of the site, with obviously the road indicating street trees and small gardens to the front of each of the dwellings. Most of the parking is provided on plot. And this image is showing an artist's impression of the green space in the centre of the site, which is described as a village green. And this is the artist's impression from the access onto Chudley Road to the southwest. And this is an artist's impression of the southeastern portion of the development. This is actually showing a double hedgerow along this boundary. And this is showing an artist's impression of the northwest part of the site, again showing the linear public open space with the boundary of the site onto the existing dwellings on the edge of Alphington over on the right hand side. And this is indicating how the public open space could be designed to maximise its biodiversity value, its pedestrian links, obviously along it between the main roads and where possible links to the existing development to the west. It's also indicating some exercise features and trails to make it an interesting and active place. And this is the view from the north of the proposed Chudley Road footway. And this view is from the south of the proposed Chudley Road footway. So we'll finish with a picture of the illustrative master plan. Now turning to pages 35 to 38, you'll see that unlike previously, there have only been 10 sets of objections to this application, as well as some more detailed comments from the Alphington Village Forum, who raised concerns previously. A lot of the comments relate to concerns about access and highways issues. Some of them do relate to matters that will be dealt with at the reserve matters stage, and there is a reference to whether some sort of local centre could be provided on this site. I think members, if you have any questions about the detailed access and highways matters, we have Lloyd Oriel here from Devon County Council Highways Department who can answer those for you. Now, because this site is within the strategic allocation area, the principle of residential development has been accepted within our development plan. So once again, it is recommended for approval by officers. Obviously, much more satisfactory plans have been provided by the new applicant, Redrow Homes, to demonstrate how the development will come forward in the future. Turning to the end of the officer's report, we'll come to the planning obligations section. Obviously, the development will be SIL liable in accordance with our SIL schedule. 30% affordable housing is proposed. Obviously, this is below our policy compliant level of 35%, but this is based on a viability appraisal that was carried out before and was reviewed by the council's valuation expert. In terms of the numbers, that will equate to 70.2 affordable units, whereas 35% would equate to 81.9. So that is a shortfall of 12. However, the applicants are proposing to comply with our policy requirement of 70% social rented and 30% intermediate. And the 70% social rented equates to 49 social rented dwellings. A number of contributions have been recommended by, in particular, the local highway authority, and reference has been made to the Alphington brief that the Alphington Forum has referenced, and those are all set out on pages 60 and 61 of the report. So members, this is recommended for approval. Conditions are set out at the back of the report, and a section 106 will be required. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Do any members of the Planning Committee have any questions of clarification? Please, Councillor Bialik.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could you tell me what status has the Alvington brief in relation to policy and all of that? I'd like to know what bearing it has in relation to the application. Thank you.
Matt, can you answer that one?
Yes, Chair. I'm just checking that. Okay, so it is an adopted supplementary planning document. It is the Southwest Exeter Development Brief, and it is adopted as SPD.
Councillor Sheldon, you wanted to speak.
Sorry, yes, it's quite nerdy and numbery, but that's no surprise to anyone. It's on page 60 of the report. It talks about transport contributions, says the figures are to be index linked from 2015, and says for simplicity, the applicant has suggested the above is combined into one payment of £8,759 per dwelling, which is indeed the figures above it added together. I just wanted to be clear that we will be indexing from that figure as well, and also indexing to when, because will the indexing stop today if we grant planning permission, when detailed planning permission is granted, or when they actually get round to making the payments when they built the 25%, 50% and 75% of the site? Because inflation is a couple of percent a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're doing 234 houses and 2% of £8,000 is 160 quid, it doesn't take long for that to build up to quite a sum of money.
Can you respond to that then, Matt, please?
My understanding of index linking is that it will be up to the time that the payments are actually made, as opposed to when the planning application is permitted. It's something that I would probably need to come back to you to be absolutely certain on, Councillor Sheldon, having spoken to our legal team, but that is my understanding and my experience.
Councillor Ghislaine.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarification from Matt about the percentage of the green space that is allocated for the 234 dwellings. It seems to be on the small side. Most of it was related to front gardens rather than amenities to the community. Thank you. The percentage, please, of the green space allocated.
Right, I'm just having a look through the report to see if I can see I'm just looking through the report to see if I can see an actual figure quoted. I know concerns were made about the level of public open space. I think the important thing to remember is that this is an outline application where the matters of the amount of open space will be considered when the layout and scale and landscaping of the development is considered. So ultimately, the illustrative plans and the parameters plans don't give an absolute certainty about how this site will be developed. They are impressions. So we can make sure that the conditions make it clear that the policy requirements in terms of public open space provision are met. I hope that satisfies your question, and in the meantime, I'll continue looking through the report to see if the figure is actually quoted.
Thank you for that, Matt. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fole.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that these plans were first published well over 3 years ago. Can I ask when they were last reviewed, please?
Sorry, Councillor Fowle. Do you mean the submitted application plan?
That's right.
Well, as I mentioned at the start, these are fresh plans that were submitted in December last year, so they are new compared to when the application was last brought before the Planning Committee back at the end of 2018.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Councillor
Chairman, can you
Councillor Mitchell.
Oh,
I can see you, Councillor Hanson. Yes, Councillor Mitchell is in front of you, though.
Thank you, Madam
thank
Chair.
you.
Just following on from Councillor Bialik's question in regard to the development brief for South West Alphington, the opening statement says that this document has material consideration in determination of any planning application proposed for the development of developing the site. What concerns me is, should we look on this document as a minimum standard the community and the council are saying should be in place, or is it a sort of a la carte menu that the developer can pick and choose which elements they decide to have and which elements they don't want? Because it does appear throughout the report there are clearly elements from the brief that are not in the proposals.
Well, you're quite right, Councillor. The development brief is a material consideration. Obviously, you and us as officers need to weigh up all the material considerations of this proposal. So that includes our development plan, national guidance, and so on. So whilst it might not tick every single part of that brief, officers do consider that this application is suitable for approval.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you. Two things I would like to ask, Chairman, if indeed to ask Matt. Forgive me because you disappeared off, Matt, and I couldn't hear the beginning of this, was that the site itself, is it all in the boundaries of Exeter, or is it some part into not Mid-Devon, but further afield? Is it all Exeter's site, or is it part of Teignbridge?
No, this site is all within Exeter City Council's administrative area, and that's why it's before you this evening. Obviously,
No, that's all right. You've answered that.
Apologies.
Thank you, Matt. The other thing I would like to ask is, I'm concerned of the open space. You are describing hedgerows. Now, the hedgerows are not a play area for children, and if it's classed as open space, you are actually cheating people of open space and children's play area and actual health. And to be perfectly honest, if you look at what you presented, and it's a nice designs, there's no question our Red Row is a nice design at this stage, but we need to have open space can at least relax and play. And to me, hedgerows and hedges and earth do not mix, is not a play area. It was too much. I don't know how that came to describe. Are you putting in hedgerows, or are they existing hedgerows? Just a small comment on that, please.
Just to partly respond to your question, Councillor, and also the earlier question, if you turn to your report, page 64, a condition has been added to ensure that no parts of the development should be occupied until details of the open space provision to be not less than 10% of the total site area, and excluding hedgerow and associated buffer area, and children's play equipment has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority and thereafter installed to an agreed timescale. time scale. So I think that condition is designed to satisfy your and the previous members' concerns over the public open space. And as I said, it's important to remember that this application is in outline and the plans are illustrative at this stage.
At this moment, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. If there are no further points of clarification, we have councillors Atkinson and Warwick who are requested to speak under Standing Order 44. So can I ask Councillor Atkinson if she would like to speak first, and then Councillor Warwick.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just check that you can hear me and see me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
All right, you can't see me. Okay. Do you want to see?
We can see the top of your head.
Oh, right. Okay. If that helps, so I can't. Is that better?
That's okay.
It's okay.
Carry on.
Thank you. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Exeter City Council planning officers for this excellent report that has so comprehensively dealt with the issues of concern that arose from the planning meeting in December 2018. I'd also like to thank the Alphington Village Forum, who's been working with Alphington residents and Labour councillors since 2012 to make sure the developments at South West Exeter here on the Exeter and the Teignbridge side are the best they can be. So we have come a long way since 2018, I'm pleased to see from the presentation. Community concerns that have been raised with me have been to ensure that there is sufficient affordable housing on this site. So I'm very pleased indeed that we have now secured 30%. And that 70% of this is to be at a social rent to help cope with the waiting lists that Exeter City Council has. And hopefully this will be available to young families coming into Alphington. So I'm pleased with that issue has been dealt with. Traffic continues to be an ongoing issue. However, it's clear from the Exeter Transport Strategy agreed by Devon County Council with Exeter City Council, which I scrutinised at Devon County Council last week, that the traffic congestion in Exeter is primarily not generated by travel movements of Exeter residents or indeed Alphington residents, but commuters who travel to work in Exeter. And the report does say, further reports on traffic does say that the traffic issues will not be significantly exacerbated by the developments on the Exeter side. So what we must address is we must stop commuting by car into Exeter and not affordable homes for Exeter residents. So hopefully the new railway halt at Marsh Barton, which contrary to the report has got funding and is expected to be completed by 2022, early beginning of that, will help reduce traffic to people who, cars going into to people who work in Marsh Barton. So that is a welcome development. So what I do again here is to urge councillors and officers at Teignbridge to work with Devon County Council to get a park and ride facility for South West Exeter, which will stop commuters clogging up our roads and causing gridlock in Alphington from time to time. Because I think that that will, in a large measure, help satisfy some of the concerns of Alphington residents about this development and the development on the Teignbridge side. So the Exeter Transport Plan and the opportunity from COVID-29 pop-up measures has highlighted the need to increase facilities for safe walking, cycling and public transport. And the consensus is in Alphington and Exeter and among councillors that we need to do everything we can to support walking and cycling and public transport and to get people out of their cars, and that includes people coming into living in the new developments. So I do hope that as this, if planning application, this outline application is agreed today, that officers at Exeter City Council will continue to work with developers and the infrastructure project managers at Devon County Council, who've secured a £55 million grant for highways infrastructure improvements to ensure, amongst other things, safe access to this site, but also permeability across all South West Exeter developments, and in particular to the next door development to the south, which Bovis is doing on the Teignbridge side or the other side of Markham Lane. And I'm pleased to read in the report that Teambridge, who has already approved reserve matters on that development, is keen to ensure that there is permeability with this site as well. And I do hope that going forward to the next phase of this development, we will see a continuous green track through the site and onwards to the ancient monument area on the Bovis site and through to River Valley Park for pedestrians and cyclists. As well as making sure that developments are accessible to buses and traffic speeds are reduced. I recognise much of what I've just been dealing with is part of the reserve matters going forward, and I'm sure that your city councillors like myself and Steve will continue to work with Alphington Village forward to put pressure to make sure that these developments do ensure adequate safe walking and cycling facilities. So I'm very pleased to hear about the Chudley Road pavements, for instance. I'm also pleased to hear that planners have stated in the report that they are working to improve the green infrastructure and biodiversity, and thank Mark for his comments about the public open space, making sure that that is 10% and there is enhanced hedgerows and a central area. The icing on the cake for me would be if we could achieve district heating system here so that we could help Exeter meet climate change targets. So that would be wonderful, and if we could do that. I'm aware that some Alphington Village Forum are concerned about the lack of community buildings, but I just want to draw people's attention that Exeter City Council and Labour councils have supported improvements to the Village Hall and the new theatre in Alphington with loans and considerable grants. So we've worked hard to make sure that facilities in Alphington are up to speed and could service these new developments. There will be some community developments on the Teambridge side by the school across the footpath across the A379, but we do want to encourage Exeter's new residents on the Exeter side to integrate and enjoy the facilities in the Alphington Centre, and I hope that some SIL money generated from this site will be invested in improved facilities in Alphington going forward with a detailed plan. So to sum up, this is a vast improvement on what's gone before, but we must work together to get the best development for Alphington through a Section 106 agree and detailed perusal of the detailed application when it comes forward. And so I'm very pleased with this very new positive approach now being demonstrated by the developers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Does anybody have any questions to Councillor Atkinson? I can't see anybody indicating. So can I ask Councillor Warwick if he would like to speak next? Councillor Warwick.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the reason why we're all sitting in our own homes what I intend to reflect today is what the residents in Exeter have the concerns that they have. I've suggested that obviously that they should put those concerns in through the website, but nevertheless I agreed that I would reflect some of those concerns. Recently in the news it was said that a lot of people were coming down to the southwest because of the COVID-19 and looking for properties to buy from other parts of the country because they saw it as a safe haven. And there are concerns that what we're doing actually at the moment is you know, I don't know whether this is a fact or not. I simply reflecting what I've been told. There are concerns amongst the local community here that what we might be building is homes for people that local people can't afford, and the priority has to be local. You know, the local housing needs, they have to be our priority, and the local people. I think part of planning has to be, as we come out of this, that we talk to developers and make sure, particularly as the new world or the new normal, and I hate that term, develops, that we are developing to meet the needs post-COVID-19. It may be because of, for example, things like high unemployment, regrettably, and they're talking about employment levels of around 3 million, that 30% social housing may not be adequate. And the fact that the government has suddenly now had epiphany and is now looking at pumping money, allegedly, into building a social housing across the country. So I do think it is incumbent on us as a planning authority to talk to developers and make sure that we're post-COVID-19 proof on a lot of these issues. And other issues such as working from home, which may have an issue. We're talking about 234 dwellings. I'm sorry about the phone going in the background. I can't do anything about it. They're talking about 234 dwellings on this one site. Of course, that doesn't, that's only one site in Exeter. When we did the presentation back in 2018, December, I used the word gateway, and that was never in any of the reports or paperwork at that time. Now I noticed that it's been recognised that this is a gateway development, and a gateway does what it says on the tin. It means that people are coming in and out of the city. So this is a very busy area, and there are examples within the last 2 years, obviously not at the moment because of the unfortunate circumstances that the world finds itself in. Traffic levels have decreased significantly, at least in the short term. But we did suffer gridlock in Alphington on more than one occasion, and although we can look at Devon County facts and figures and Transport for Devon and all the rest of it, I live here and I experience it, and it doesn't matter what those facts and figures say. There were days where I couldn't get out of my own road here in Alphington. So the next part that I want to read out, these are the concerns of the local community, and they're specifically about traffic, and it is a huge worry here. We're very close to the A30 and we're very close to the M5. It would seem that the 2019 transport assessment produced by Hydrock for Devon County Council does not fully consider the future traffic arising from the rest of the Southwest Exeter development, comprising of additional 1,000 houses being built by Bovis, Barrett's and Burlington estates on the northern side of the A379, which is only half the whole development. I have been informed that, and that talking about me, that the Tempro 2024 calculations are inaccurate, as they are based on national trip rates from National Trip Ends Models item and a 2011 National Travel Survey. The reason the original DCC plans were deferred in 2018 was because of the outdated traffic figures, and these ones by Hydrock, a Cardiff company, appear no better. Now, as I say, this is the information that I've been given. All of the traffic heading from the A379 towards Exeter along the Dawlish and Chudley roads joins Church Road at a junction and ends at a bottleneck at Alphington Road. See that on the plans, leading to Alphington Street, which consistently records illegal levels of air pollution. This junction near Sainsbury is regularly congested by even more traffic coming from the A30, which already causes serious gridlock in Church Road and ECC designated conservation area, with air pollution levels possibly on the brink of illegal limits. Yet I have been informed it is not included in Hydrock's manual traffic survey. If this application is approved, a condition must be imposed as per the Alphington Development planning brief to minimise construction traffic coming through Alphington Village. Alphington Village is not the easiest place to get through, and already, again, as I reminded the committee in 2018, it doesn't even take into consideration the vast amount of agricultural vehicles that come through the village. Residents are very concerned that when the development of north of the A379 is complete, there will be 6 new accesses onto Chudley Road and 2 on the old Dawlish Road, a narrow country lane with extremely dangerous junction at the Devon Hotel roundabout. Already this access is regularly blocked by rush hour traffic, and yet Highways England apparently have no plans to improve it, despite many pleas. There's a feeling expressed by many Alphington residents that the Highways Department is acting irresponsibly because it has not provided any evidence to residents to back up its statements about the effect of traffic. In fact, it totally ignores residents by stating in every planning report that there is no problem. I mean, Chair, you know, we're talking about this development, we're talking about 234 houses, which if they only had 1 car each, is 234 more cars. They insist that the traffic from this development is unlikely to result in severe impact on the safe and efficient operation of strategic road network, and existing traffic flows are relatively low. Where are the Southwest Exeter report's infrastructure enhancements promised in the Exeter Core Strategy Policy CP19? There is also some concerns about the amount of traffic expected to travel along the Dawlish Road, which some residents describe as a country lane. And as you saw on the plans there is a proposal for a junction to the new development on Dawlish Road. Now, you know, I hear what's being said about making it safe, but I ask any of you on this committee, drive along Dawlish Road. It's a speedway. There are also concerns the proposed cycle and walkways will not materialise, and if they do, they will not form an integrated system due to the piecemeal nature of the developments. And this is a concern that several residents have come to me on, phoned me up about. And I have to ask, because, as I say, I live here. And I see the traffic in normal times, and I've seen the build up, and I've seen the gridlocks and the backlogs and the traffic jams down the road that don't exist according to Devon County Council. I want to know from Devon County Council, I believe there's someone there, what are your plans for dealing with the traffic in Alphington? We can't keep funneling more and more traffic in. I hear what Yvonne says about green travel, and but you know, it may be the answer, it may not be the answer. A lot of residents here, Chair, think that there should be an independent traffic assessment. They see, and these aren't my words, these are the words of residents here. They see Devon County Council as the Highways Authority, both the gamekeeper and poacher, to quote several residents. And it seems that their attitude to a lot of the residents here, and this is why it was deferred in 2018, is that, you know, we've got to keep coming back until we get the answer right, and that is just to approve these developments. Now, you know, we know that people need homes here in Alphington, as they do in the rest of the country and the rest of the city. But what we're saying here in Alphington, Chair, is, you know, it's no good just building more homes here unless you deal with the problems that already exist. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. Before we go any further, is Lloyd from County Highways in attendance? Can anybody tell me?
Yes.
Lloyd, would you like to comment on what Councillor Warwick has just said?
There are a number of issues there, but I guess the main one was how we cope with the additional traffic onto Alphington. As part of the Southwest Exeter Master Plan, Devon County Council put together a Southwest Exeter access strategy and that looked at how we could deliver housing in a sustainable and safe manner. As you would have seen in my response, Hydrock did do an updated traffic assessment based upon updated traffic counts on the request of members. That was deferred last time. And we can only look at this application as it has come to us. Throughout all discussions through South West Exeter, we've looked at sustainable transport links into the city. Councillor Atkinson has mentioned lots of things about how to get people to walk and cycle and use public transport into the city centre to reduce car use. And within the response, all the Section 106 requestments are to improve walking, cycling, public transport, and to try get to the Marsh Barton Railway halt, and to improve the safety onto the A379. With regards to the concerns on, I think it was Dawlish Road he mentioned, this parcel represents some frontage onto Dawlish Road, but the majority of that would be in the adjacent administrative boundary of Teambridge. So when those parcels come forward, it may be that the nature of that road could be changed with frontage development, which would slow down traffic, and maybe a 30 miles an hour TRO could be imposed along there to slow down that traffic and overcome that safety concern. With regards to construction traffic, I think there was a condition for construction management plan, so we can direct construction lorries away from Alphington Village and for them to use primary routes away from sensitive areas such as the schools, etc. And that's a standard condition that we use for most major developments. AQMA, I think he mentioned, I think that might be one for Matt, because that is an environmental issue rather than a roads impact issue. Matt?
Thank you, Lloyd. Before we go any further, does anybody have
Yes.
any questions to Councillor Warwick? Nobody's indicated. Matt, right, would you like to respond to Lloyd?
Yeah, just picking up the point about the air quality, that is an issue that we obviously take seriously when determining planning applications. It is a material planning consideration. Our environmental health department assesses that for us, and I'm just trying to find their comments. The environmental health officer's comments on air quality are on page 47 of the officer's report. I think it says the initial comment was made regarding the need for an air quality assessment, as it was not clear whether this assessment considered cumulative impacts. Consequently, the applicant was requested to confirm that the traffic data used in the assessment includes predicted traffic generated by all proposed development within the South East Exeter area. The applicant's highway consultant has confirmed that the traffic analysis has taken into account all the proposed southwest traffic. And the environmental officer has confirmed that no further assessment is therefore required, but requires a condition to be imposed. And I'll have to flick through the conditions to see what that condition is, if you bear with me.
Matt, while you're looking through the conditions, is there a condition on construction traffic as well? Are you able to answer those two?
Yes, I'm not too sure if you heard me, but yes, there's condition 9 for a Kemp and I'm just checking the remaining conditions.
Hours of delivery and construction, yes.
Condition 13, pre-commencement condition, states no development shall take place until details have been submitted and agreed in writing by the local planning authority of how good design principles and best practice measures as outlined in Chapter 5 of the IAQM/EPUK guidance, land use planning and development control planning for air quality, will be incorporated to ensure that emissions are fully minimised.
Right,
The development should not be occupied until the agreed measures have been implemented. So that is the condition that has been added at the request of the Environmental Health team.
Lovely, thank you, Matt. We have members speaking on this application as well. So can I ask Juliet Meadowcroft, who is speaking against the application, to speak, please? And unlike the councillors, you have only 3 minutes to speak on the item, and you will be advised when your 3 minutes is up. So when you're comfortable, will you please speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Good. I'm the chairman of the Arlington Village Forum, and I just want to say that in addition to the extremely serious issues around excessive future traffic caused by the massive Southwest Exeter development, comprising 2,500 new houses, the Arlington Forum objects to these outline plans on the specific point of the lack of any new community facilities. As I'm sure you know, a Southwest Exeter development brief was produced and adopted by Exeter City Council in 2014 as a supplementary planning guidance document. This was produced after 5 workshops with your officers and councillors, Devon County Council officers and agents, and our committee, but totally ignored in the previous deferred application submitted 5 years ago. At least Redrow Homes has met many of our requirements in this document, for which we are grateful. However, one of the most important stipulations is that an area of 0.11 hectares is required as a local centre, comprising a site of 0.1 hectare for the future provision of a health centre or doctor's surgery. This should be established on the eastern side of Chudley Road, but has been omitted from the Redrow development, despite our many requests for a community building outside our village to prevent thousands of new residents from trying to use our oversubscribed facilities. We're particularly disappointed that your planning officer has not supported us on this requirement in our brief. Arlington Village has very limited parking spaces and dangerously narrow roads without adequate pavements. So we desperately need to avoid encouraging yet more traffic entering this congested area. As we have said constantly over the last 8 years, most of the facilities in our village are already full, such as the primary school with over 400 pupils and the surgery with 8,000 registered patients, and thus long waiting times for appointments. The plans for a proposed surgery in the new local centre, south of the A379, are still uncertain. So where will sick people go to see a doctor? The Redrow planning statement says there's no need for a community building, as the new local centre is only 400 metres away. But this is extremely misleading, as it's actually over 1 kilometre away. This deception is proven by Hydric's 2019 Accessibility Walking Plan in their transport assessment, which only shows our village facilities. The route to the new local centre is far from flat, even before one reaches the proposed high and long pedestrian cyclist bridge over the A379 and the hill beyond. How many people will be willing to walk or cycle there and carry back their weekly shopping? Most will certainly prefer to drive into or through our village to reach the nearest retail outlets. An important principle of the National Planning Framework states that development should encourage social interaction through strong neighbourhood centres. How will this happen if there's no new hub in the northern half of the Southwest Exeter development where residents can meet and feel they belong? If a health centre is not possible, then there could be a community-run shop, as there is in Ede, with a flat above it, where an employed pastoral worker could be based. This would at least ensure that new residents had some support in building a cohesive community and essential social interaction, which would help prevent loneliness and antisocial behaviour. This arrangement would also be some mitigation for the current 3,500 500 Alphington Village residents who are so concerned about the new inevitable
That's
increase
the end
in
of the 3
traffic.
minutes, Chair.
Oh, one more sentence.
I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes is up. And it has to be a very strict 3 minutes.
Okay,
Very
all
sorry.
right, thank you.
Stay on the line a moment, because anybody have any questions to the speaker? Can you please indicate now? Councillor Hussain.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've just read, according to one of the objections of the lady speaker, is that she said about the schooling. Actually, I read that they are going to build schools in the new proposal. There will be a nursery and a junior school and a secondary school. That's what I read in the new proposal, because that's one of the things that caught my attention, that when you have 234 dwellings, it means you're going to have families there, and is there enough capacity to get the new children into schools? And I read that they are, and they're going to pay this through the SIL to DCC and to Devon County. What I didn't read at all, and I completely agree with the lady speaker, is that there were no provisions at all to doctors, dentists, or schools. That's. But my question is, my comment is. Sorry, my comment was that is the lady aware of that there is the new proposal, there is a provision for schools? That's my main question here. Or thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Can I answer that?
No, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to speak again. Oh yes, sorry, yes, you can answer that one. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Well, of course I'm aware. You know, I've been chairman for 12 years now of the forum, dealing with this terrible development. And I'm only too aware there's going to be a massive school, but it's miles away. That's what I'm saying. It's a kilometre away. It's a long walk. It's downhill and uphill and over this great big new proposed bridge over the A379, never mind about the pollution, and up a hill to get to the school. And people, you know what parents are like, they're not going to let their children walk to school. They're going to go in their cars, and they're going to cause even more congestion on Chudley Road and Dawlish Road. And by the way, on Dawlish Road, Bovis is opening a massive development onto Dawlish Road as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions to this lady? Right, we now have a second question, a second speaker, Mrs. Jenny Mitter, who is speaking in support of the application. Would you like to speak, please? You, like the previous person speaking, has only 3 minutes on the item, and you will be advised when your 3 minutes is up. So when you're comfortable, would you like to speak?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the opportunity this evening. My name is Jenny Mitter, and I'm from Lichfield. I'm the agent for the planning application, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant Redrow Homes. The officer report provides a thorough summary of the planning application. However, I thought it would just be useful to clarify a few points in relation to the affordable housing provision. The development proposes 30% affordable housing with 70% social rented and 30% intermediate. This level of affordable housing is supported by a detailed viability assessment, which has been accepted by the Council's independent viability assessor. The officer report makes reference to discussions with the applicant to increase the affordable housing provision to 35%. However, in this context, the report importantly does not highlight the Council's recent request for a substantial education contribution through the Section 106. Changes were made to the Council's SIL charging regime earlier this year, which states the viability assessment. Whereas previously education contributions were included within SIL payments, this is no longer the case. As such, Redrow is now being asked to provide around an additional £1.5 million in education contributions through the Section 106. Whilst Redrow has challenged the basis for this education contribution, they have agreed to pay it despite it not being counted for in the viability assessment. As such, Redrow are taking on additional financial burden through this contribution, which will impact the scheme viability. Therefore, the ability to provide a policy compliant level of affordable in this case is unfortunately not achievable. The viability assessment found the site to be viable with 30% affordable, and in light of the additional financial burden on education, it is considered that the proposed affordable provision should be found acceptable. In light of the Council's 5-year housing land supply position and the imperative to deliver housing growth in line with the plan-led system, it is hoped that members will support the officer's balanced recommendation so Redrow can progress the reserve matters in a timely manner. Also, just to answer the query in terms of the POS, I can confirm that the illustrative master plan demonstrates 1.05 hectares of POS, which is the equivalent of 13% of the site area, so more than the required 10%. The linear park area is 0.8 of a hectare, and that's without counting the areas taken by the hedgerows, which I think was another question. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, I muted my microphone. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Does anybody have any questions to this particular speaker? Councillor Hussain, are you indicating you want to speak? Carry on then, please.
My question is, there is some complaints about not providing sufficient infrastructure for this community. For example, is there no doctors or dentists around, and also the bus services and the community facilities, especially the community facilities, are not there at all in the plan. I couldn't see anything to indicate that there is a determination or an area where these facilities can be provided. Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. There is a significant Section 106 contributions towards the transport, which includes the bus contribution, and the scheme has been designed to have a bus corridor through the scheme. In terms of the local centre, as I think it's set out in the officer report, there is, and I think Councillor Atkinson touched on it, there are very good facilities within the village. There are shops within the village. There's also going to be this proposed local centre at the Bovis site. So it was felt that there really isn't the market demand to support additional retail facilities in this location. And in terms of doctors and dentists, as far as I'm aware, there is capacity, and the NHS haven't, occasionally they will make representations if they feel that a contribution is required, and that hasn't happened in this instance. So we consider that there is capacity.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions to Ms. Nitter? Councillor Fole.
Thank you, Chair. I think perhaps the Speaker needs to acknowledge that the additional contributions received are going towards building a school not in Exeter but in Tinbridge. And the vast majority of people who will benefit from that school will be the residents of the 2,000 new homes built on the other side of the road. It's just unfortunate there's not enough places in Exeter itself, and particularly Alphington, for those up to 150 to 160 pupils aged 2 to 16 who are going to have to trug across a bridge over a busy road in all kinds of weather. But the financial contributions, which one might argue could have gone towards infrastructure, are going towards the building of a school in Tinbridge.
Was that a question, Councillor Fole?
I'm just asking if the public speaker could recognise that.
Yeah, we do recognise that. Obviously, the request for the contribution has come from Devon County, which is obviously providing, it's not just about the LPA boundaries, it is the wider, the school boundaries. And sorry, I've just completely lost my train of thought then. There was something else I was going to say and I've completely forgotten it. No, sorry. Oh, no, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say the requirement for the school is included within the development brief. And so we are guided by that, and they have considered that it is the Bovis site, which is the best location for a school to serve this area. And that does include this site.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are no questions, can I thank both our public speakers tonight for their contributions. I don't think anybody else wants to speak on this one, so to ask questions. So it's now open to debate. Who wants to speak on this application? Can you please indicate to me now? Can't see anybody indicating. Councillor
Harvey.
Oh, sorry, I can see where's Councillor Harvey? He's disappeared. Councillor Harvey, where are you?
I'm here. I'm in my front room, Councillor Lyon.
Sorry, you disappeared for the moment. I couldn't see you waving at me. So if you would like to start the ball rolling, please.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions so far. This development and the whole of the southwest development of Exeter has frightening parallels with what's going on in Pinhoe at the moment, with development both within the city boundary and outside the city boundary. And it simply appears that the needs of those residents who purchase these houses and the impact on the residents who are already here have not caught up with central and primary tier authority planning with regards to delivery of services. I fully appreciate that within the Section 106 agreement, there will be a considerable sum of money for buses, but people need to understand buses are currently delivered by a commercial company. That is the regulatory framework for bus services in the UK. So after the money runs out, there could well be no more buses if the bus company are not making any profit. There could be no more buses. The houses will still be there. The people will still be there. The need to get to school, to health facilities, to shops, etc. will still be there. So that's the first issue about buses. And I'm not going to go on because you've all heard me say all of this before. There are several issues around space and so on, which would, if this application is approved, will come back with a reserved matter. So I'm not going to talk about those. But as I say, the issues around health, around doctor surgeries, around more places at the RD&E, play, how much space is there for play, who's going to look after and manage play. I hear the cry plentifully from all sorts of commercial developers. We will put in place a commercial company who will collect funds from each individual household and pay them. Well, I can assure you that my experience is that model does not work satisfactorily. Sports pitches, larger facilities, our facilities such as the Riverside, when we get it back, the St. Sidwell's Point, it'll be great for people to be using those facilities. But there simply seems to be no care or attention paid to the needs of the new residents and the needs of residents who are already there. And if you want to see it in action, you'll all be very welcome to come to Pinhoe and I will show you exactly what's happening here. And it's a frightening echo of this. And we really need to think long and hard about exactly what we're doing if we approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Fole.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Harvey. I listened with interest to what you said because I hadn't been to Pinhoe for many years until I came canvassing with you last year. And frankly, I didn't recognise the place. And I think with 43 original objections to this plan, plus the 12 points raised by the Alphington Village Forum, a further 10 letters and more things from the AVF after that, maybe some of them have visited Pinhoe as well. Affordable housing. We have a policy. Our policy, Labour Party policy, we say 35%. Not 25, not 34, not 29, 35%. If we're serious about that, and we go on about 70% of the affordable units are to be social rent and things, but if we're serious about that, 35 is 35%. I am disappointed at the lack of community facilities. People in Alphington have bent over backwards to raise money to refurbish their facilities there, which were ancient, but they deserve newer stuff. And this was a requirement of the original Alphington development brief and has not been adhered to. Mention's already been made of health and school place provision. 8,000 people at the health service, needing health service. Primary school full, it has been full for years. And it's a shame to me that a lot of planning gain has gone via Devon County Council to provide a school that's not even being built in Exeter but in Teignbridge. And as I said earlier, between 150 and 160 pupils aged 2 to 16 are having to go across a footbridge and go about a kilometre to get to their school. There's a lot of rethinking needed on this. I would also stress the need to include that condition for a further programme of archaeological site investigation to be required, because there's certain evidence that there may be Roman or even prehistoric remains on that site. With all those things in mind, I cannot find myself to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fell. Who wants to speak next? Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got very quick 2 more concerns. Well, I can have lots of concerns, but 2 more that I didn't talk about before. And one of them is to do with the ecological connectivity between the Red Row housing site and the Bovis housing site. It's very important for biodiversity to have connectivity between sites. Otherwise, animals and such like cannot be moving from one place to the other. So I'm worried about that, and there is nothing there to tell me in the master plan to illustrate such connectivity. And the other bit I wanted very quickly to talk about is the noise impact, and the noise impact is not assessed. I know Matt answered something that it has been assessed, but no, in page 47, it says noise impact has not been assessed either during construction or the impact of the on the ambient noise, i.e. after the construction, you've got all this traffic around this area. There is no assessment of that impact, and I would like to see a report of assessment of noise during the construction and after on residents, the ambient noise. Thank you, Chair. That's my concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this one has been kind of there and thereabouts for many years, and we are actually looking at an outline application this evening. So there's a lot of detail which is perfectly relevant to the delivery or not of this this housing, but is not relevant to this evening's discussions. I completely understand the arguments about where the school's going to be, and you know, those councillors who were on the planning committee and indeed on the council when this was first adopted as a site for residential development will know that we had many meetings with both Teignbridge and with Devon County Council about the siting of schools, and again argued against having a bridge over the A379 as the main access. But regrettably, those battles have been fought and lost. And while I completely understand the point about parents driving their children to school, and parents drive to school for many reasons. I mean, a kilometre is not that far to walk to school. I mean, probably most of us on this Zoom call walked considerably further than a kilometre to get to school. But times have changed. You know, more parents work, more parents drop their children at school on the way to their own employment. But it seems to me that what we have in front of us is an application to deliver much needed housing on a site that has been agreed for the delivery of housing. So I think we need to be careful that we are making judgments on the basis of what we have in front of us and not what we'd like to see. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item?
Councillor Sparks, Chair.
Councillor Sparks.
Chair, thank you.
I quite like this development. However, there is always one concern, and my concern is much the same as Councillor Harvey's and Councillor Svoe. It's the lack of community facilities. I've seen it myself when I've been door knocking myself in Pinhoe. You know, when it comes to non-political matters, the common complaint is we can't access a doctor's surgery. I've seen it in Topsham, and it just really concerns me that this development is on the edge of Exeter, and it's very easy to sort of pass those responsibilities onto the other developments. But of course, they're not necessarily in Exeter, they're in Teignbridge. And of course, we've got no control over that. So you can end up with a situation where it gets passed to one local authority as kind of assumed it will happen, and it just simply doesn't happen. And I think we need to be very wary of that, because we really don't need, especially in the light of COVID, you know, thousands and thousands of people not being able to get a simple thing such as a doctor's appointment. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. I would like one of the officers, after everybody is to finish, is to just remind us and to clarify, because there's a lot of reference to community facilities, and it is sounding to me that people are wrapping up things like doctor surgeries in schools within community facilities. The days have gone, unfortunately, of whereby as a planning authority and a district council, we can say, and you will have a hospital there, or you will have a health centre there, and we will make sure the developer brings down money for that. That is not the case now. So we must understand that the provision of schools is dealt with by Devon County Council, and many people travel across. They have the right now to put their children into schools where they can go, so they will transfer where they need to. So if it then comes down to the understanding is community facilities, and community facilities is not just a hall. Community facilities are what we put in, and that's where the discussions with the developers, and I would have thought with the Alvington Forum, would take place on what they can do. We have invested a lot within community facilities within the Alvington area based upon the fact that there is new housing coming, and we have a policy throughout Exeter on how we deal with the SIL money. And I like to think that we have been fair and across the board in each of those occasions. So there's a lot of, and I understand, emotion with regard to these things. However, there are matters that are not in our control. And I hear a number of other things, and I've been reading the papers and glancing at them as we've been speaking, trying to find out some of these issues. So I would like the officer, one, to clarify that community thing and what influence, powers or authority we have to ensure there were health facilities, for example. And then also, because if this is about buying a pint of milk somewhere, then obviously there are issues that we can have discussions with. The other thing is, I need to understand on what grounds, if this was to be refused, that we would be using. And it's sounding like at the moment, we don't like it here at the moment, would not be a planning ground. We must look to the planning regulations, what is before us, as sad that may be on occasions. And the most damning thing here is against this, or for it, is the fact that the Devon County Council raised no objections on the highways issues. So if the officer could clear that up at the end of the debate about community facilities, I would be happy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? I am looking to see if there are no hands up. I've got nothing on the side. Matt, would you like to answer Councillor Bialik's thoughts?
I'll do my best, Chair. In terms of the community facilities, I mean, that includes several different types of things. So education is clearly one, and the application has washed its own face in that respect by agreeing to a £1.5 million contribution towards education facilities. And as was mentioned, despite that additional obligation, that wasn't a planning matter when the item was considered before in 2018. The level of affordable housing on offer is remaining at 30%. In terms of health facilities, we do sometimes get representations from the clinical commissioning group, and we have actually received a representation for the land west of Chudley Road requesting a contribution. However, we haven't received such a representation for this site, and quite clearly neither the developer, being a housing company, or us as a local authority, develop health facilities and surgeries. Obviously that decision is made by the clinical commissioning group. So I don't think it's quite as simple as saying we refuse this application because it doesn't include a health centre, because quite clearly that decision needs to be made by the clinical commissioning group, and they haven't made such a request for this site or indeed the adjoining site. The SPD, the Alphington brief, does indicate a small local centre on this site, but that I think that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. I think there's no reason why some kind of small local centre or small shop couldn't be provided on the other land that falls within the development brief area, and I think refusing an application or refusing this application on the basis of not including a small local centre in the face of the fact that the council doesn't currently have a 5-year housing land supply wouldn't be what we as officers would recommend you do. And I think, as Councillor Black has mentioned, clearly a lot of so-called community facilities these days aren't directly delivered by developers anymore. Obviously, the Community Infrastructure Levy, introduced obviously around 10 years ago by the government, means that we do charge a levy on certain types of developments within our city. And whilst this has been submitted an outline, I think you could reasonably expect something between £2 million and £2.5 million that will go into your pot to spend on, quite frankly, whatever community facilities you would like. So on balance, this scheme is is providing housing on a land that is allocated for housing in our development plan. It's providing a substantial Section 106 contribution towards various transport infrastructure to address various concerns that have been raised this evening. An additional substantial education contribution that, whilst the location might not be perfect, at the end of the day, this will be a brand new school, which isn't something that many of us can say we went to. That's something I didn't. So that will be hopefully a top quality new school for pupils of obviously the new residents in this area, but also existing residents of Exeter, and obviously a substantial community infrastructure levy sum. So I hope that answers or clarifies some of your concerns.
Thank you, Matt. Can I remind members this is an outline application and it will be coming back to us when we have the reserved matters application. And I have a comment actually here from Councillor Atkinson to say that to confirm that the school is going ahead, which looks quite promising. So If there are no other, oh, sorry, Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak? Councillor Williams?
Yes, I would just, if it's okay with you, Chair, I would just like to ask a little bit further clarification of Matt's comments about we hadn't received any requests from the clinical commissioning group. I just wondered if that isn't an oversight on their part then, because we have had them in other applications where they've requested a certain sum of money towards capital projects to, say, expand local GP surgery. So is the fact that we haven't had one here or for the other developments, that's an indication that they don't think it's necessary?
To be perfectly truthful, I don't know. All I can confirm is that we haven't had a similar request for this application. Obviously, we would need to speak to the clinical commissioning group to ask whether they would seek a contribution from this development. But clearly, if that was to happen, that might put further pressure on the level of affordable housing for this application. But all I can say is that obviously they've submitted a representation for the current application for the land west of Chudley Road, but not this application.
Thank you, Matt. If there are no other speakers, we will go to the vote.
Oh, Chair, Councillor Mitchell requested to speak.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see him. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from Councillor Williams' point, the third bullet point on the first page of the supplementary planning document for Alphington states, include high quality community facilities for the new residents, comprising a site for a new hospital centre stroke doctor surgery, recycling facilities, allotments and public open space. Could I ask Matt, would that wording have been agreed with the health authority or the appropriate body at that time in 2014? So was it a requirement from them at that stage, or was it just something the local people of Exeter decided without consulting the health authorities?
I would have thought that we would have consulted the relevant infrastructure providers when producing that document, but quite clearly that was quite some time ago. I can't confirm if we did or not. That's something I'd need to go away and check. But I think what's more relevant is the fact that the CCG hasn't provided any sort of representation in relation to this application, or made representation suggesting there should be a health centre on this site. So I think I would be cautious about certainly refusing the application on the basis of not having any health centre, but I think there's a possibility of going back to the CCG and clarifying this particular point.
Thank you, Matt. And there are no other speakers as far as I can see now. The recommendation for officers is to approve this application. Can I have a recommendation for somebody to move it, please? Councillor Sutton, and somebody to second it?
Second, Councillor Bialik.
Councillor Bialik. Right. Thank you. So, Mark, can you do the vote, please? Members, can you state whether you are voting for, against, or abstaining, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bialik, please.
For.
Councillor Branston.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
Against.
Councillor Gassane.
Abstaining.
Abstaining. Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Abstaining.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams. Well, thank you. Councillor Lyons?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. That's 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it's 9 votes in favour. The recommendations have been passed, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. So that one has passed. We now go on to item 7, the application for land east of Cumberland Way, Munkerton. It's Deborah, I think, is presenting this one. Welcome to the meeting, Deborah. Would you like to do your presentation, please?
Thank you. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, so hello members. This is application 181145 OUT and it's on pages 69 to 94 of your agenda pack. This is an outline application with all matters reserved apart from access. The application is for a residential development of up to 80 dwellings and the applicant is Devon County Council. This is the site location plan. It's a 1.88 hectare site and it's located on land east of Cumberland Way, Munkerton. The land is bounded by the Tide Barn Link Road to the north and Cumberland Way to the west. You can see a strip of land, let me just get my cursor, at the southern end of the site. So between the south end of the site and Hollow Lane is a strip of land which is owned by Exeter City Council. Also on this site location plan, you can see on the west, there's a strip of land between the western boundary of the site and Cumberland Way. And up here, you can see where the proposed access is into the site. This is a site aerial photograph. So the application site of these two fields here in the centre. To the east of the site lies Pin Lane. And at this point, Pin Lane is pedestrian and cycleway only. The site is former agricultural land. It's not been farmed for a number of years. And on the western side of the site, here you can see that the land has been planted up with trees and shrubs when Cumberland Way was first constructed. Between the southern boundary of the site and Hollow Lane lies a parcel of land that has already been transferred to Exeter City Council as public open space under a Section 106 agreement linked to Outline Planning Application 134984. The Hollow Lane at the south of the site forms part of the cycle and footpath system that serves the Munkerton area, and it is a strategic cycleway. The site lies within Flood Zone 1. It is within the Local Energy Network Area A, and there are no above ground heritage assets in the vicinity. The site is part of the Munkerton and Hillbarton strategic allocation. So the principle of development on this site is acceptable in planning policy. The development is in accordance with the adopted core strategy, and the principle of residential development on this site has also been established as part of a larger outline consent. So the current 1.88 hectare site is part of a much larger site, 11.62 hectares of land, that gained outline planning permission for residential development of up to 400 dwellings in June 2015. That planning permission included a new access to Cumberland Way and internal roads. Approval was then granted for a reserve matters application for the northern and western parts of the 11.62 hectare site, and that reserve matters application excluded the land subject to the current application. This plan shows outlined in red the original outline approval for up to 400 dwellings.
And on this parcel of land here, outlined in red, is where the reserve matters approval was granted for 250 dwellings. You can see the parcels of land more clearly on this slide. So in red is the current application site. In green is where approval was granted for 250 dwellings. In purple is the land which was transferred to Exeter City Council under the outline consent. And that land, coloured in purple, is known as the Ridgeline Parkland. And then in pink, so where my cursor is now, that's where planning permission has been granted for a nursing home and 8 close care living units. This slide shows the detail of the proposed access from Tithe Barn Way, with the pedestrian cycle paths along Tithe Barn Way and the proposed raised table. As set out in the officer report, there is an opportunity to provide a direct pedestrian cycle link through the site to Hollow Lane, and one of the recommended planning conditions is that this pedestrian cycle link forms part of any subsequent reserve matters application. So we've got some photographs of the application site. This is looking from the roundabouts, looking at the northwestern end of the application site and looking east along Tithe Barn Way. And then looking back in the opposite direction, west towards that roundabout, with the application site on the left-hand side there. And that's the looking at the proposed access off Tithe Barn Way. This is looking from Pin Lane, and it's a section of Pin Lane which is on the northern side of Tithe Barn Way, and we're looking towards the application site on the left-hand side. And if I get my cursor up, just here is Pin Lane, and that's on the southern side of Tithe Barn Way, and that's where Pin Lane is closed to vehicular traffic, so that's where it's just pedestrians and cyclists only. And in the distance, you can see the application site. This is a photograph taken from Cumberland Way, looking east along Hollow Lane, so looking down along the strategic cycleway, which we're hoping we'll be able to get the connection through to with that pedestrian cycle link. In terms of representations received on this application, we received 2 representations. One where the person agreed with the comments received from Exeter Cycling Campaign, and they also raised questions about whether there were plans to encourage building of facilities to support residential growth in the area. The other letter of representation raised concerns about highway safety as a result of increasing traffic on Tithe Barn Link Road and use of Pin Lane on the northern side of the Tithe Barn Link Road. They were concerned that the 30-mile-per-hour limit was not obvious, and they were also concerned with the safety of children coming to and from school, and there were calls for better visibility displays or traffic calming measures with regard in relation to Pin Lane on the northern side of the Tithe Barn Link Road. I need to report a late letter of representation from the owner of Orchard Lee. So this representation was received this morning. So I propose to read out the representation in full. So it says, I refer to the planning application 181145 OUT, which is to be presented to committee today. And I note the documents include access junction details showing Pin Lane with properties Sycamore House, Burwood and Sandrock. Between the properties of Sycamore House and Burwood is my property, Orchard Lee, Pin Lane. Orchard Lee has not been identified by address. However, it appears a pedestrian pavement adjoining Orchard Lee is shown on the various drawings and may have a bearing on safety considerations. Please note there is no pavement adjoining Orchard Lee, and I understand reference to the Ordnance Survey plans will confirm this. I request this inaccuracy is addressed on the drawings and also referred to the committee, please. So if I take you back to the site location plan, Orchard Lee is this property here. And then if we look at the proposed details for the site access, this is Pin Lane north of Tide Farm Way, and Orchard Lee isn't actually shown on this drawing that's put forward for approval as part of this application. So consultation responses are set out in full within the officer report. There are no technical objections to the proposed development, subject to recommended conditions and clauses within the Section 106 agreement. The applicant has agreed to all of the recommended clauses of the legal agreement, and the applicant has also agreed to all of the recommended pre-commencement conditions. Devon County Highways Authority raised no objection to the development, subject to a number of planning conditions and clauses within the Section 106. The Section 106 will include a financial contribution of up to £5,000 towards a traffic regulation order, and will also include £500 per dwelling towards travel planning contributions. The provision of a pedestrian cycleway along the site frontage and the provision of a raised crossing at the site access will be subject to a Section 278 agreement. Devon County Council Highways Department require a number of planning conditions, and this includes the provision of the pedestrian cycleway running through the application site. That pedestrian cycleway will then cross through Exeter City Council land to meet up with Hollow Lane. The Council's Public and Green Space team raised no objection to the link, subject to details of its exact location, which will be presented through a subsequent reserved matters application. Exeter City Council, as landowner, will need to be party to the Section 106 agreement, and a clause will need to state that as landowner, Exeter City Council will enter into a footway cycleway agreement as reasonably required by Devon County Council to enable the pedestrian cycle link to Hollow Lane through the Ridgeline Park. Devon County Council Education Department has requested contributions towards early years provision, primary school provision and secondary school provision, and the applicant has agreed to these contributions forming part of the legal agreement associated with the application. The applicant has offered on-site affordable housing, and they've offered 35% affordable housing in line with our planning policy, and they're willing to provide 70% social rent and the rest as intermediate affordable housing. So 35% affordable housing equates to 28 affordable dwellings on site. The legal agreement will also secure a connection to the district heating system, and as previously mentioned, Exeter City Council as landowner will need to be party to the agreement. So in conclusion to this presentation, the proposal is in line with Exeter City Council's planning policies, and the land forms part of the strategic site allocation at Monkerton. The proposals will make a positive contribution towards housing delivery. The density of residential development is in line with the master plan for the area, and the access arrangements put forward are considered to be acceptable. The officer recommendation is conditional approval subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement and subject to the conditions listed in full within the officer report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Deborah. Does any member have any question or clarification? Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams, can you hear me? You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Is there a sill element chargeable here?
Yes, there is a sill element, so that will be determined at reserve matter stage, depending on the number of dwellings that are put forward at reserve matter stage.
Any other questions of clarification to Deborah? Councillor Hussain.
I could see that there are quite a bit of work already happening in Gypsy Lane and Gypsy Hill Lane to widen that road to be part of the footpaths and cycleways. I was just wondering if I mean, I could see now, I saw the whole plan because I couldn't see where the different numbers of dwellings were, which is the 250 and the 400 and the 80. Now I could see on the plan. However, I'm worried the density of all of these housing, what is the impact on the highways? There's quite a lot of planning dwellings on that area. Is that matched by careful consideration to traffic and noise and pollution?
Can you answer that, Deborah, please?
Yes, I can. So Lloyd is also here, and he set out his detailed highways response to the application. And so Devon County Council as Highways Authority are satisfied that the area can take this additional traffic that will be generated by this particular development. In terms of noise, Environmental Health have recommended a condition in relation to noise. And so that is condition number 10, that's on page 89. So that's a pre-commencement condition, and that's requiring an acoustic design statement should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority as part of the reserve matters submissions, and that any mitigation measures required shall be implemented in full prior to occupation of the development and maintained thereafter. In terms of air pollution, there was a study undertaken in 2013, and Environmental Health did actually ask for an updated air quality assessment. But as set out on page 85 under other matters, I've written that as planning officers, we consider that an air quality impact assessment is not necessary in the particular circumstances of this application, given the planning history on the site and the previous outline approval for up to 400 dwellings. The fact that the site is allocated for development in the local plan, and also the fact that the proposals include measures to reduce vehicular movement and encourage travel by other means, including walking and cycling, and the provision of the pedestrian cycle path through the site, and the proposed permeability of the development, and linking into the existing strategic cycle path adjacent to the site.
Thank you, Deborah. Lloyd, do you want to come in at all?
Yeah, sure. The traffic impacts have already been accepted as part of the wider Moncton allocation as part of 134984. as said by Deborah, the allocations within the Monckton Strategic Master Plan, all of the impacts of the developments being along the whole of Tythe Barnlink Road have been assessed by Devon County Council before, and this application forms no different to what has already been accepted 7 years ago. So we cannot form a basis for objection given the conditions and 106 measures that we have requested.
Thank you, Lloyd. Any other points of clarification from anybody? If not, we will go into debate in this one. Who wants to lead off with this one? Councillor Harvey, I can see you waving your hand, which isn't surprising, really. Councillor Harvey, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. As with the previous application, there are many things that prospective residents, purchasers of these houses, and people living in the area where close by will find difficult. But as with the previous application, they are not necessarily material grounds for refusing an application. The primary consideration is, as Councillor Bialik will well know, is where does one buy a loaf of bread and a bottle of milk? It's an awful long way to anywhere where you can avail yourself of either of those two things. There are bits about this application which I really like. There's the bit at the top, the southern bit, where at least 3 of us planted some trees the other day. At least 3 of us, possibly more. That bit's fantastic, the Ridgeline Park. I really like the fact that the access is from Tythe Barn Way, which means that it's from the northern end of the site, which gives greater permeability throughout the site and down to the new hub where Pinhole Railway Station, where there will be trains for people to get into central Exeter and to go eastward towards Axminster and Honiton, and also an electric co-cars facility, and where I understand the County Council has just received grant funding from South Western Railways to increase the car parking and enhance the whole facilities as a travel hub. So there are bits about this application that I do like, but overall, the principle of continued development, it may well be, as Lloyd has identified, approved in 2013, but given the context of what's happening in East Devon and what's happening here, I'm going to find this very difficult to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Who wants to speak next? Councillor Morse.
It's I don't know, it's a difficult situation. I think we those of us who live and represent on the east side of Exeter know that there has been considerable development and that it doesn't necessarily feel as though all infrastructure has been taken into account, whether that be education or more sustainable modes of transport or the shopping facilities and that have been provided in the area. It all feels like it came at the wrong time, and as a result we have not necessarily got what we needed. I think the difference for us with this application compared to some of the other applications we may have seen is that it was part of a master plan, and whilst it may not have come together as well as we may have liked it to, there was more, it is a more thought out application than some of the ones we've seen, and definitely some of the applications that will come and have been that are in areas that we have designated as greenfield, that we don't want to see developed, that we want to remain as they are. So whilst I do have concerns about the application, they are not to a degree that I feel that we could strongly refuse them. So as such, I'm going to support the development, but I do share a lot of Councillor Harvey's concerns. I just think it's one of those unbalanced situations, and I'm just tipping the opposite way.
Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Branston, are you indicating you wish to speak?
No, Chair. No, Chair. I'm quite content with what I've heard so far.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Well, if there are no other speakers to this, we will be going to the vote. The recommendation is to approve this application. Can I have somebody to move this one, please?
I support.
Councillor Branson, right, a
Yes,
second.
I'd like to propose it, yeah.
And a seconder, please.
I'll second Councillor Bialik. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. Mark, can you do the voting, please? Reminding members that you are voting for, against, or abstaining.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bialik, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Branston.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Gussain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
I shall abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. That's a majority favour on the recommendations which have been carried, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. So that item is carried. So that leads us to item 8 on the agenda, the list of delegated decisions. Can I ask Bindu if she has anything to say on this one?
Thank you, Chair. We haven't received any notification of questions from members, but if members have any questions, we're happy to take them and provide an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. That brings us to the last item of business on tonight's agenda, and that is the appeals report. There again, Bindu, can you speak on to the report?
The report is before you, Chair. If members have any questions again about any of the detail, we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on this item? Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, members. This brings us to the end of yet another virtual meeting. It's become the norm now. So I will formally close the meeting, and I think we meet again about the 20-something of July, and I will see you all then.
Okay.
Pardon, what night? What date in July?
29.
No, it's the 29th today, Yolanda.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yes, it's the 29th of June today.